HP recently revamped the styling of their Omen laptop line. Now I recently purchased and reviewed the new Omen 17t, so make sure you watch that video as well, in case you are on the fence about perhaps getting the 15-inch or the 17-inch model. This time around, HP sent me a 17-inch review unit to review. Now both start at $1,200 with an i7 and a GTX 1660 Ti, and both can be configured up to an i9 8-core CPU. Now some of the differences are subtle, such as a more brushed styling on the lid of the 17-inch, and then another is they have separate audio ports on the 17-inch. Both have 3 USB 3.1 Type A ports, a Thunderbolt 3, mini DisplayPort, HDMI 2.0, Gigabit Ethernet, and an SD card reader that accepts cards all of the way in. Now a big difference is the graphics cards. The 15-inch uses a 2070 and a 2080 that are max-Q versus the 17-inch which uses 115 watt 2070 and 150 watt 2080, so you will definitely get more performance going that route. Both the 15-inch and 17-inch can be configured with a 1080p 60Hz, 144Hz or 240Hz panel, or even a 4K IPS should you wish. Now if you want to go for G-Sync, then you need to go for the 2070 or 2080 in either model. Mine is running an RTX 2060, and although it doesn't have G-Sync, it does run off that GPU all of the time. So there's no hybrid graphics options here. Both of my units have the 144Hz panel, and you will notice that the 15-inch is brighter at 330 nits versus 278 on the 17-inch. Now according to Panel Look, the 17-inch 144Hz panel has an sRGB of 100% and only a 30 millisecond response time versus the 9 millisecond on the 15-inch. Now that being said, I saw no difference in my GSYNC test. The side bezels are fairly slim, a little bit thicker at the top where the webcam is placed. Now there's no Windows Hello unfortunately. The 720p webcam does overexpose things and it doesn't look too great. Not that clear, but the microphone is pretty good though. There is a bit of screen flex caused by the hinges being more centrally positioned, and I would have preferred to see them at the sides to give it more rigidity. My unit did have a bit of backlight bleed in the lower corners. It does have an anti-glare coating, and it does seem to cope reasonably well under bright light. It's an all aluminium build. Now the lid is divided into 4 quadrants, 2 with a brushed finish. You have the logo at the top and Omen stenciled at the bottom. The design is definitely more subtle than last year, but still shows it's a gaming laptop. The keyboard deck is also brushed aluminium and shows a lot of smudges and fingerprints. The Elan trackpad works well, and I particularly like having the separate mouse buttons that don't take much pressure to activate. Now unlike the 15-inch, you now have space for 6 programmable macro keys on the left. The key lighting is actually in 4 zones. Now it's not per key RGB. And although you can change the colours and brightness, you can't make them flash or anything like that. You can configure in the BIOS so that the function keys can alter volume, brightness, etc. without pressing the FN key. You have a key to open the Omen Command Center software and a separate number pad. Now there is a little bit of flex on the deck, but it's not too bad. The aluminum back cover has large air intakes and large rear feet with speaker grills at the sides. Inside you have some foam that helps reduce vibrations from the 1TB 7200 RPM mechanical drive. Now the speakers are here, and you have a 70 watt hour battery, which is good for 2 hours 30 minutes of watching YouTube at 25% brightness. Underneath this metal cover is where you will have your M.2 NVMe SSDs. Now in order to have 2 M.2 slots, you need to either have the 2070 or 2080 model. As you will notice, I only have one connector. And this is very strange design because it actually makes no sense to me at all. All models start with 16 GB of RAM in dual channel and can be configured with 32 GB. And you should be able to upgrade to 64 GB yourself should you wish. The Wi-Fi card is a fast Intel Wi-Fi 6 AX200. The fans push out air via 3 heat sinks, and there are 2 shared heat pipes with 1 extra one for the GPU. This is the same design as on the 15-inch. The command center shows system vitals, manages your network speeds, it configures the macro key assignment, you can change keyboard lighting, and allows you to choose one of 3 performance modes, as well as switch the fans from auto to max. Now if you don't have this max fan option, make sure to uninstall the software and reinstall it from the Windows Store. You can still hear the fans at idle, but they are still quiet. Auto fan at load is 45 decibels, and if you activate the max fan, then you're at 50 decibels, which isn't the loudest I have heard. But in my testing, I will aim to have good performance with good thermals and lower fan noise. Now, the game stream option allows you to stream games from your laptop to another PC on your network, which, to be honest, I think is probably more useful for a desktop. With the default setting and max fan, we can see the keyboard is comfortable at 37 degrees Celsius, and we see much the same underneath. Now, the fans are doing a great job of moving hot air out of the system. Disappointingly, there is no subwoofer, so the speakers lack a little bit of bass and are average in loudness. You can still hear gameplay, but audio is much better using the headphones. At £7, it's quite lightweight for a 17-inch laptop, and the 200-watt power brick isn't huge either, making a total travel weight of £8 6 ounces. Now, the power pull from the wall was 199 watts using the default profile, and that rose to 206 watts using the performance. Now, this is with a combined CPU and GPU load, so it's a worst case situation. Still, I wish it had a 230 watt brick, since the laptop did restart after it reached 206 watts. Now, I must point out, this didn't happen under regular gaming, and as for battery drain, HP has an option in the BIOS to prolong battery life, so you will see battery say at 94% and not charging. For those using the laptop for real-time audio, you will be pleased to see that it did pass my latency mon test. Running Cinebench R20 with the default profile auto fan, the initial CPU power is set to 90 watts, but it will quickly settle down to 45 watts. Consequently, this clock speed drops to 2900 MHz and 66 degrees, but a low score of 2234 points. Now, setting the CPU at 3800 MHz and 150 mV undervolt, you will see the CPU initially holding at 3800 MHz and then drops down to 3200. The watts is still at 45 and the temperature remains about the same, but this time we score 2559 points. Running with the performance profile and the same undervolt settings, the CPU holds a 3800 MHz clock, temps are in the low 80s, but this is with autofan and it is now pulling 72 watts. Performance mode drastically increases the watts and thus heat to the CPU. Still, we get a decent score of 2894 points. Now, I recommend using this setting for all CPU work, even with max fan should you wish. Now, one such use case is a handbrake encode. Here you can see after about 30 minutes it was still holding the 3800 MHz clock, and with the max fan was running at about 80 degrees, which is perfect. Still, as you can see from the chart, without the undervolt, the CPU was pretty much the slowest of the bunch. Now, with an undervolt, it matched the time of the stock Helios 300 and got smoked by the same CPU in the ASUS GL531GU. Now, just so you know, if you used the default profile, the time was 39 minutes 37 seconds, and this was actually slower than a 4-core 9300H. Now, onto some gaming, where the system has both a CPU and GPU load. Battlefield 5 DX11 Ultra settings, using the default power profile, auto fan on the left and max fan on the right. With the auto fan, the CPU settles at 35 watts, whilst the max fan, it goes up to about 40 watts and a slightly higher boost clock. Now, the GPU performance and frame rates are unchanged, but you do see a 4 to 5 degree drop in temperature. Now we have performance mode with max fans. The CPU settles in at about 55 watts, which translates into a higher boost clock, and its temperature hovers in the mid to high 80s. Now, since I wanted to use auto fan to reduce noise levels, I undervolted the CPU by 150 millivolts, set speed shift EPP to 1, changed the power limit 1 to 55 watts and power limit 2 to 65 watts. I also overclocked the GPU by 171 MHz on the core. Unfortunately, using autofan and the performance mode saw the CPU temperatures increase into the low 90s with a peak at 95, as you can see on the left. On the right is the same settings using the default profile, and to be fair, the performance of that is still good and the temperatures are rock solid. Now remember, this is with autofan at 45 decibels. How about DX12 and using ray tracing? Well, expect a 30% performance hit, even with DLSS enabled. There is no doubt though that reflections look great. The Omen 17 performs similar to the non-electro boosted Mech 17, and since it is also available with the 1660 Ti, I throw in numbers from the Asus GL531GU. Now overclock that card and you will see RTX 2060 numbers. Here is PUBG on the Erangel map, Ultra settings, both using the default profile, auto fan with undervolt and overclock on the left, and on the right we use the max fan. We see a frame rate gain with temps that are quite similar with less noise. Still, if you aren't into tweaking, the default max fan combo works really well. Here is Shadow of the Tomb Raider using DX12 higher settings. The Omen 17 using default and auto fan mode is on the left, and on the right is the Mech 17. Now both have the RTX 2060, and it is interesting to see that the GPU on the Omen 17 is actually holding a higher boost clock. As a result, the Omen performs really well in this game, some 9% faster than the Mech 17 and 16% faster than an overclocked 1660 Ti. So how would I sum up the new HP Omen 17t? Well, its solid aluminum build may only be let down by its central hinges. Now I've had no issue on my Omen 15, but it's a shame the 2060 model doesn't have the second M.2 slot or even G-Sync, and also the CPU is not the fastest, but they are competitively priced. You can get an i9 and a full 2080 GPU for $2,130, and I think that is a steal. Now for CPU work, you have to use the performance profile to get the best results, but in gaming, my advice is to stick with the default. You get the same frame rates at lower temperatures. Applying an undervolt will let you use the auto fan with class-leading low fan noise. I do wish the speakers had a little bit more oomph to them, but audio through the headphones is loud and clear. The keyboard is decent, and if you're into macro keys, they have you covered there. I haven't covered too many 17-inch laptops, but since this one can be configured with an i9 and a full 2080 for $900 less than the MSI GE75, this Omen 17 would be my choice. I'd like to thank you for watching, and remember, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.